All right, guys, welcome to episode 16 of the Pale Horse Podcast. I have one of my best friends, Christian, here, and we're going to have a good podcast coming up. So, Christian, tell them a little bit about you.
Yeah, I've been at a sheriff's office. I work in Virginia. I've been there for about 7 years now. I've spent that time in corrections, on patrol, also on the department SWAT team, and I've also been a firearms instructor for law enforcement, as well as a general instructor, teaching things such as officer survival, and then, of course, firearms, like I mentioned before.
Yeah, so Christian's awesome, and we're going to talk right out of the gate about the importance of training, but then also I do want to talk about a little bit about the industry and then going into kind of what some gear and things that we've been seeing recently on the range. And Christian's attended a ton of schools in law enforcement, for his work and then also on his own personal time, and so he can really speak to also preparedness for training and things. So a lot of questions that we got and have received recently has been about guns and gear setups and people, newer students want to get in training classes or guys who really haven't trained before, or they're kind of new to the training world, maybe it's taking a class or two or concealed carry. And so they have questions like, man, well, what should I bring? What do I need to bring to class? What does a typical class consist of? How do I approach a class? And then recently, we've had a newer batch of students. They're not like our regulars per se in class. And man, we've seen just questionable gear choices in training classes and things like that. So I appreciate all the questions coming in. They were really guns and gear based. And so we're going to speak to a little bit about that. So your mindset, Christian, coming into a training class, training atmosphere, what is your mindset at as let's say even a student? How are you approaching that? What are some gear preps and things that you're doing, things that you might pack? Do you want to go in I know on the law enforcement side, sometimes it can be different, but even just on a standard class question, if you say, man, what's your mindset going to this? What do you do to prepare for this? Or some key things you remember that or try to keep in mind that you have, then do you want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah. So it's actually a very open question as far as what gear to get, what to be prepared for. I'm a big proponent, me and Ryan talked about this earlier, of use what you got. Now, I wouldn't recommend going out and buying something specifically just because there's a class that you want to take, but if it's something that's going to enhance your training, that's going to enhance the way you do things, it's going to help you, it's going to assist you for what it is that you already do, then yeah, it may be something good to invest in. And it really depends on what the course you're taking, what the class you're taking is. For some classes you might take, it could be as simple as just a good holster, a good sturdy belt. If you want to take that a step further, get you something like a belt that you can now attach mag pouches, medical kits, things like that on. For instance, I've got a couple belts. I've got my belt for patrol in my job. I've also got a belt for SWAT call-outs, and those belts, because the mission's different, they have different things on them. So it really depends on not just the course, but the situation that you can find yourself in. And one way you will know that is by going out here and doing classes and saying, okay, I think this would assist me in this way. You might find there's for instance, certain different types of mag pouches. You have flat mag pouches. You have the ones with the bungee on them. You have just straight Kydex mag pouches. And really you won't know what you like or what works well until you use them. Some people turn their magazines a different way than some other people do. Yeah. It's really about just getting the experience and finding out what you like and what works best for you. Yeah, and so I think first things first, when I even go to a class, I still like to attend classes. It's just be teachable. I'm always looking for something I can pick up, something I can learn. I'll even start with like a handgun one class, and I hear a lot of guys go, man, I want to start a handgun one. No, I think everybody needs to take handgun one, regardless. Handgun one is a class that I could take every year.
and just stay up to date, just reviewing fundamentals where we can always review fundamentals. And another thing is, so in that teachable spirit, it's don't be afraid to at least try things a certain way. I was teaching a pistol tune-up class yesterday. I'm going to pick on one of my guys, and there was a couple that were running their pistol mags how I would consider wrong. They were running them backwards, in my opinion. And so I said, just try it. And they said, maybe I'll try it later. I'm going, okay, well, you're paying for class. You've come to class. And so I'm like, that's the same thing of me saying, well, I might try to be a better person tomorrow. Like, just start being a better person today. Like, and so it's one of those things where I'm like, all right, and they almost are like, nah, I think I'm gonna leave it. I know it's faster. You've demonstrated it's faster. I know it's faster, but man, I'm just used to this, and I'm going, okay, but if we've already talked about the inherent deficiencies, fix it. Yeah, I'm going to start fixing it in my dry fire routine. No, fix it now. Yeah. Like, it's one of those where like, I'm going to put it off. And it's these same guys that have come to 4, 5, 6, 10 classes, and each time they come to class, they still run their mags backwards. And they're like, yeah, I know it's faster, but it's just not what I'm used to. I promise I'll start working in my dry fire routine. That's like saying I'm going to wait to, practice being a good husband until 10 years after I'm married. No, just like start before you get married. Like, don't waste that time. And so part of that's like just being in that teachable spirit where, man, just try it, and do it. And if the instructor tells you to do something, man, it also comes down to a respect thing where I've had some instructors tell me to do things and I didn't necessarily agree with just based on experience, but on their range, I'm at least going to say, okay, I'm going to try it this way during this drill. Yeah, I'm going to listen to what they're saying. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to try it. And, and there's been times where, sometimes it has been faster and I've been wrong. And that's great to have that teachable spirit and not always doing things the way that you've always been taught or done things. I think back at tactical medicine, for instance, where since I started teaching tactical medicine, so many protocols have changed. Well, if I've been in that mindset of, this is the way we've always done it, then I would be wrong if I did not stay up to date on the Committee on Tactical Combat Casualty Care's guidelines, where new studies have come out, new drugs have come out, new ways of doing Ukraine versus global war on terror has changed some of these austere environments and wilderness first aid protocols in the tactical environment. If you're not staying up to date, you're wrong. My mother is a doctor and she went to med school in 92, 93 maybe. And when I was first teaching tactical medicine, we were pushing tourniquets, and we still do. Tourniquets are great. And she's like, no, you can't use tourniquets. Like, their arm will fall off. Mm-hmm. Like, no, like science disproved that 20 years ago. Like, if you're not, but it's the way that she was taught. And that's the way she had always thought, Mm-hmm. And so part of that's just being teachable. So show up, don't have an ego, be willing to learn. Even if you're a higher level shooter, just be willing to learn and give it the benefit of the doubt. Just because I think that people's experiences and ideas versus reality are different, and so that's an issue there. And we see that common in the industry, especially with instructors, where it's, other instructors putting down instructors or, they're making posts like, oh, this instructor said to slow down and, never slow down. And like this industry is so... I'm happy that they're doing well. I'm happy that they're teaching. I might teach something a certain way just because we have different experiences. Or maybe I saw one class as instructor teaching a pistol marksmanship class. And he's like, guys, slow down and get your hits. This other instructor teaches a what's called high octane pistol class for competitions. And he's blasting this other instructor like, yeah, if any instructor says to slow down, they're garbage and they're a clown and veteran instructors. Pistol marksmanship versus high octane competition pistol. There's different applications.
There is.
And so I don't know. It's just this industry's kind of turned into a more cutthroat group where, man, I just want to build each other up and be happy and celebrate their success. And there's plenty of business for everybody. And so part of that, is don't automatically assume that the next guy is wrong. It just might be different. And different doesn't always mean wrong. And then there's plenty of instructors, that I think is completely wrong, but they have a different set of experiences. Have you had that in law enforcement?
Well, just to add on what you've done. So, for instance, the way I was taught CQB in law enforcement was different than the way I learned CQB here. And when I started training here, I was newer, and I was thinking that I did know everything. And one thing that will teach you that you don't know everything is when you get shot in force-on-force classes by people who have had different training than you.
Right.
So that'll open your eyes real quick and make you think, maybe I still have something to learn. Maybe there's something I can take away from this. Yeah. I've had my law enforcement training. I've had training here with Ryan. I've had training with an organization up in northwestern Pennsylvania. I have learned different things at those trainings. And like Ryan said earlier, just because it's different doesn't mean it's wrong. What I've done with all that is I've incorporated things I've liked from all three of those places. There are things I've liked about all three of these organizations. And there are things where I'm like, I get why you do it. It just may not work for me. So maybe I don't utilize it. But definitely don't come to a class or come to any course with the mindset of, well, I don't agree with that, so I'm not going to try it. At least try it. You're already here. Try it, see what it's about, because you might learn something, and it may even better the way you do things. Worst case scenario, you leave and you say, that really wasn't for me, or I don't think I'll end up utilizing that. But at least try it that way, so then you'll know.
It's always stupid things, too. It's never like how to shoot a pistol correctly. It's never it. It's like, hey, man, how do you keep your med kit on your plate carrier? It's always weird things.
And if you're not going to do it, why do you ask?
Right. It's always weird things where I'm like, hey, your tourniquet should be accessible with either hand. Because you'll see them put it behind their pistol or with their knife placement. It should be accessible with either hand. Or mags, what I think is just considered wrong, just because orientation's easier, it's less wrist bending, less wrist movement, or they'll. Some guys have come to class recently with rifle mags, bullets up in their plate carriers, and they're crawling on the ground. That's the new one right now, because there's a lot of instructors teaching that. And it's bullets up. And they go prone, they start to crawl in the rag clay and red mud and all that stuff. I'm like, dude, flip your mag around. I'm like, nah. I'm like, okay, so that's not even going to give you bad habits. That's just turn it around for the next 6 hours. And if you don't like it and you feel like it doesn't work for you, then put it back, or they'll ask questions. Where do you want me to keep my knife? And I'll tell them, well, that's not where I have it. So it's never anything that even would build bad habits, or it's just little small things. So that's why I do think that teachable spirit is important.
Yeah. I'm under the opinion too, and my mind is wondering, how does that work?
Right, sure.
It is. But I am also under the opinion, we've even talked about this in law enforcement when we do firearms, about how, hey, if somebody is shooting a certain way and their grip isn't necessarily the way we teach it, but they are hitting holes at 25 yards, why are we going to correct them? As long as it's efficient and what they're doing is efficient, as long as it is efficient and as long as it's safe.
Right, yeah.
So if they can do a reload, I don't know how they can, but if they can do a reload that way, and it is fast and it is efficient, I'd like to see it, honestly.
Right.
The way you're describing
but they're never good. it was terrible reloads.
Right.
Absolutely
if you're not, hey, maybe try it this way. And
right.
if you're the student and you're having an instructor saying, hey, maybe try it this way, give it a try.
Yeah. Yeah, or sling setups or other. It's just little things like that. Also, equipment is so key. Showing up with the proper equipment to class. So things that I would love from students that we don't see often. Showing up to class with a zeroed pistol or rifle is going to be key. Showing up with
be zeroed anyway.
It should.
If that is on you, especially if it's something you carry, especially if it's something you're saying, oh, this is my home defense gun. Why is it not zeroed?
Yeah, I had a law enforcement officer come to class not too long ago, had his duty rifle in the trunk of his patrol car for last 6 months, showed up to class, said he needed to zero it. It was 4 feet off at 25 yards. And he's rode around with it in his patrol car on duty.
Well, you even reminded me of that. We had in SWAT school, we zeroed the first day.
Yeah.
And I made sure I was zeroed before I came. I was like, I'm not going to go to this school. And I was pretty sure I was, but I still was like, I'm definitely going to still make sure. Just in case my optic got knocked really hard or something crazy happened.
Sure.
It could. Yeah. So I'm going to make sure this is zeroed before I go. Well, we zeroed it, and then it was about half the class got chewed out and it was for that reason. Why in the world? These are your rifles that you were defending your county with, your city, your community with.
Mm-hmm.
Why is this optic not zero, do you know how much of big of a liability that is? And it is.
Absolutely. A
You're
zero rifle.
4 inches at 25?
Yes.
Yeah, so you're looking at
4 feet at 25. It was off cardboard at 25.
Okay, so you're looking at 16 minimum.
16 feet at 100. Yeah. I mean, not even. So we were shooting at 100, and we didn't even see impacts on berm. And we were like, no, okay, let's dial it back to 25. 4 feet off at 25. I mean, so it's just little things like that. So, show up with a zeroed rifle and pistol.
Well, I think there's a problem too. And this is something that isn't known well, and I don't know why it's not. A lot of people, I don't know if it's the majority, but a lot of people will buy guns assuming that their irons, I'm talking rifles in this instance, but their irons are zeroed.
Oh,
they
right.
buy that
right.
rifle.
Yeah.
I've had it happen one time to where it's been close.
Yeah.
They're not like that. Go out and shoot your guns. Make sure that they're zeroed, because they are probably not. More often, they are not going to be zeroed. There was a department recently. More departments are going to red dots on pistols. And apparently they didn't know that they were supposed to zero their optics before qualifying. And they were all thinking, well, why in the world this is the worst I've ever shot. Well, it's because their optics weren't zeroed. And they thought, now to them, the optics, they had a Glock offers a package where the optics come on the guns. They were under the understanding that, hey, these guns were zeroed at the factory, so they should be good to go.
We've had that happen in red dot pistol more times than I can count, where guys will go and buy a red dot pistol, carry it, come to red dot pistol class, and the pistol's not zeroed. And they're like, well, I bought it from the gun shop with it already mounted. Does not mean it's zeroed. Extra batteries, always something to have in a range bag. Earring protection dies, optics dies. I like two spare batteries per battery. So if you're running a red dot on your rifle, I've got 2 batteries for it. If you're running a flashlight, you got 2 batteries for it. If you're running hearing protection, 2 batteries for it.
That's really not a bad thing to keep, not just in your range bag, but for me, what I do is I run pistol grips that have caps on the end. I have spare batteries in those caps. Yeah. In case you're out in the field doing something, like, for instance, if I'm at work, and the batteries are actually on the gun itself. Yeah.
Or even for y'all, law enforcement, flashlights. We taught low light classes for vehicles and CQB, and the law enforcement officers show up with half-dead flashlights.
We run through batteries like crazy.
Yeah.
That's where you're working nights, and you're working 12-hour shifts in a lot of cases. You're using that light a lot.
Yep. So spare batteries, a Sharpie, little things like that, a high-quality belt, high-quality holster. If you're unsure, man, send us a comment. We'll post we'll post holster options or belt options in the comment section. Things like cleaning supplies. We had a pistol rifle tune-up class yesterday. We had 4 or 5 pistols fail, and most of them was either because guys stuck weird aftermarket upgrades in their Glocks. That was majority. We had a Timony trigger fail. We have a spring fail, aftermarket low power competition spring fail. So little things like that where guys are just throwing in these upgrades and then the upgrades are failing. And that's an industry thing too, where we're going to see how tricked out can we get our pistols. Yeah. And then they turn out completely unreliable.
And it's a lot of case, I think people will try to buy skill.
Oh yeah, for sure. We had in that class yesterday 2 red dots come off of handguns, and 1 red dot and a flashlight come off a rifle. So, and then these guys don't have tools. So if you come to class, have your Allen key to adjust. We've had that where guys will come to red dot pistol class, and it uses like a little whisker Allen key, to adjust their optic, to zero their optic. They don't bring it. So bring your Allen keys for your optics, for your rifle parts. If you guys, a fix-it stick kit is worth the money, every penny to keep in your range bag.
They're torqued.
Yep. The fix-it sticks are where it's at. Things like an extra set of hearing protection, extra set of eye protection, and guys, don't cheap out on your eye pro. In my opinion, I've seen so many guys, or ear pro, and so I'm gonna harp on for the next minute. But I've seen so many guys roll up with Geisley rifles and Night Force optics and suppressors, and they've got all the kit and all the stuff, and they have a $10 pair of hearing protection and Amazon.com like Crossman eyeglasses. Have a high quality set of ballistic rated eye protection. Even if you go like the Smith & Wesson Sports for like $20, they have an impact rating. They've got options. What kind? Do you have like an eye pro? I like Oakley's, but do you have an eye pro recommendation?
No, I really don't. It's something honestly that I'm not good about, but I'm actually getting better about it because I was actually asked the question recently because I'm one of those people you're talking about.
Okay.
I'm bad about buying the cheap set of eyeglasses and like, oh, I've never had this happen. Well, you never had it happen until it does.
Right.
So my question that I asked myself recently, as well, I'll ask everybody else listening, is how much are your eyes worth?
Right. Yeah.
You know, I mean, Oakley's, they're probably what I'm going to be looking at getting. Before, I thought, okay, there's no way a pair of sunglasses should cost $150, $200.
Right.
Now, I know it doesn't cost that much to make them. I did recently get to look through a pair of a buddy's, and it sold me.
Yeah.
And it's not just like your cheap sunglasses, just turning everything dark. It is actually enhancing. It's almost like high definition to those glasses.
Yeah,
and you're getting ballistic protection. You're getting a lifetime warranty.
Right.
You really are getting a lot behind that company and that product.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm looking at getting into now. But I do agree with what you're saying. That's just something that I haven't put into practice myself yet, but I'm going to.
Yeah, and it's for force-on-force classes. Guys don't think about spall coming off of steel. I mean, we have dudes getting hit with spall in the eyeglasses constantly, and they have cheap glasses, and it's taking chunks out, nicks out of the eyeglasses. Why risk that? In the shoot houses, you know, with like wood and debris and concrete and things, we were running CQB shotgun today and shooting from inside vehicles with the glass and man, buckshot. And you've just got all that spray coming back and all that glass and material coming back through the windshields, and they're trying to rake the windshield, you know, put the shotgun through the windshield and fire off those rounds, and there's debris coming all back everywhere. And so, or vehicle defense classes, shooting handguns, and some of the guys are running like frangibles or the solid aluminum defense rounds, and they're fragmenting back and everything else. So yeah, I mean, those high impacts, a good quality eye protection. Ear protection is gonna be the one I'm gonna harp on because I teach full time. I have to yell all the time because guys will roll up with either non-electronic hearing protection, which in today's market, there is no reason why people should not have electronic hearing protection. And if you don't have it and you don't have the extra money, at least go get a pair of like Howard Impacts.
Yeah, Howard Lights.
Yeah, Howard Lights. The impact lights.
Are they around $30?
$39. Yeah.
Okay, 30 to 40. Walkers are around 40.
That's what I was going to say. Your Walker razors.
I've got a pair of Peltor Sports.
Peltor Sports.
And I recommend them. They're excellent. They're about $50.
Right.
And then you can do the whole gel cup upgrade as well. Where they're extremely comfortable. You can do them with the Sports with some modification on your end.
Right. And that's the big thing is guys show up with either non-electronic hearing protection or they're dead and they don't have batteries, so they just don't put them. Or, and I will tell you guys, there's a difference in electronic hearing protection. They're not all equal. I mean, I run like Peltor Comtax, but most dudes aren't going to drop $400 or $500 on hearing protection. I understand that. However, that is not something, again, that I really want to cheap out on because they'll get some cheap $20, $30 electronic hearing protection that are big and bulky. Then they can't get a cheek weld on their carbine, and it's always slipping off, and it's always doing something. And so I do like the Howards. They are pretty good. I actually like the Howards over the Walkers. So electronic hearing protection is one of two things. It either clips or it compresses. Those are your two. You got compression or clipping. So anything over a certain decibel point, if you use clip, it'll cut off. So if you're wearing like the Walkers, for instance, they clip. And so they're a little grainy, a little fuzzy. And if a bunch of dudes are shooting on the line, or a guy at the end of the line is shooting, or the next bay over dudes are shooting, everything that's coming in past that decibel point, it's clipping any sound coming in. The problem is, as an instructor, if I'm trying to teach or talk to you and the next guy's running a drill, what your hearing protection is doing is clipping out part of what I'm saying. And then you're going, okay, hold on. Like, let me like make sure. Then I've got to talk louder, right? Versus, let's say a Peltor, like my Comtax, they compress. So what they're doing is they're taking all that noise and then compressing it down into a hearing safe. Granted, the price difference is
It is
exponential, right?
That's where you're getting what you're getting for your money.
Sure.
Whereas if you find yourself, whether you're law enforcement, military, anything like that, or you find yourself in a bad situation with a team, even if you've got gunfire going on, loud noises, you can still be from me to Ryan and still communicate and talk to each other.
Yep.
That is what you're getting for your money. Probably, now I'm not sure what these are. You may be able to speak on this, but one of my next Ear Pro purchases to get some higher quality Ear Pro MSA Swordens.
Very good.
Yeah,
and they are compression.
I was very impressed with those, and it kind of gets you into an area where you are paying some money. You're putting down a couple $100, but you are getting some good Ear Pro. You're not having to completely break the bank.
Yep. And it's for the money. Swordens are the best, I think. Sub $400 or $500. Right. Yeah, swords, and they're going to run what, 200-ish.
I think they're in. You can probably get them on sale for low twos. I think they ride in the mid twos to upper twos.
Yep.
Not quite $3.
Right.
Yeah. Somewhere in the middle.
They are sub $3, I know. And so y'all are going, man, that's a lot for hearing protection. Yes, it is. Says the guys who run the Geisleys with the suppressors and the full kit and the plate carriers, and y'all are dropping $5,000 on a rifle and then running $30 hearing protection, right? And so there's just some differences there. What do you run hearing wise?
All those sports.
Okay, yeah. So the Peltors.
Yeah.
And I do like the Peltor sports are better than the Walkers and some of those.
I believe they are. Yeah. Because I've got both, and they are, but they aren't that compression. Like
no, they're not.
They it's cut out. Loud noise, they cut out. And I mean that's if you just think about it from a technology standpoint, that's much easier technology to manufacture than a compression. Yep. That's where you're getting where you're having to pay higher for the other brands for compression.
Yeah. So good quality hearing protection, because I'm always having to repeat myself and yell, and guys are like, man, it cut out and I can't hear you, and that's even a safety issue. And so I would recommend that. Another thing, please show up with all of your magazines loaded. I can't tell you how many times dudes roll into class and they've got 16 mags to load and we're waiting on them to get started with class. That does not mean that your firearm has to be loaded, but at least have all your magazines loaded.
Or show up early and load your magazines.
Yeah, or show up very early and load your magazines. But if class starts at 9, by 9 o'clock, your magazine should be loaded. So that's another one. A cleaning kit with clean guns. So another reason that most of the pistols failed yesterday, they were a lot of regular students who take a lot of handgun classes here. They haven't cleaned their guns in 3, 4, 5, 6 months. Some of them have 2,000-3,000 rounds through their pistols. And we're in a really red, dirt, clay, dusty. I mean, these dudes, like, you rack it, it goes and it closes on the slide, and it's failure to feeds and failure to ejects. And they've got eight months of red dirt stuck in their ejector, or extractor. And you're like, man, like that pistol should not sound like sandpaper being drug across a wooden table when you rack your pistol slide. Then these pistols are failing, and they're constantly having failure to ejects and failure to feeds and failure to fires. And then the dudes are getting frustrated, right? And pistols are going down. They can't complete drills. They can't complete the training. So then they're going, okay, now my gears hold me back. But it's because you haven't cleaned your pistol. Show up with a clean pistol and rifle. And then make sure that you have a cleaning kit. Make sure you bring extra lube. Make sure you have grease, especially in some of these classes where it is super dusty, dirty, and or super rainy.
And if you come take a class with Apex and you go to Rad Range, me and Ryan were talking about this earlier, and it doesn't even look like it. It doesn't even look like that dirty of an environment. Here's the problem. If you come and it hasn't rained for a few days and it's extremely dry, you lay on the ground and go prone, and you get up and you've got dirt all over you.
Yeah.
When you get in the drills where you're running, sliding, going down to a knee.
Shooting prone. And
shooting
all that.
prone and dust is getting kicked up. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. To completely go on the other side of the fence of it, there was a class I had taken that was actually during a hurricane that turned into a tropical storm.
That's right. Yeah.
That one or not.
Advanced DMR. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, just all that red dirt now turns into mud.
Yeah.
I had actually pulled out my pistol to do a pistol transition.
Yeah.
Had a whole just glob of mud sitting on top of the rear sight. Had to take my hand, move it off before I shot, because I didn't have a sight picture at all. I mean, it's honestly, it's a great place to put your gear to the test.
Right.
But but if you haven't cleaned your gun in a while, I mean, and I know but believe me, I've had malfunctions with everything.
Yeah.
If you train enough and you shoot enough, you will have a problem somewhere along the line. Don't force a problem. These guns, modern guns now, are excellent. They're good. Yeah. But still, maintain your guns in your off time. That's life-saving equipment. Yeah. Even though your Glock is supposed to go whatever the number is, people want to say 5,000 to 10,000 rounds, and it doesn't need to be cleaned. Is it a good idea though? If you're if you're trusting your life to that piece of equipment, why not keep it clean? I've had malfunctions with Glock. I've had malfunctions with MMPs. I've had malfunctions with ARs. I've had malfunctions with AKs. If you shoot enough, it will happen. Mm-hmm. So keep your stuff maintained as well as you can.
I clean my guns once a year, whether they need it or not. Like, it's a joke, but I mean, it is. I'm one of those. I don't clean that often, I have to admit, right? But the pistol and rifle that I teach with is always clean. And that's because if you run it in these environments, and I'm teaching, so if I'm going to take a class as a student, before I go to that class, the night or two before, when I'm getting all my gear and stuff prepped, I will clean the pistol I'm taking, I will clean the rifle I'm taking, I will clean the backup rifle and pistol that I'm taking. And so if no other guns in the gun safe is clean, those guns that I'm taking to class are clean. Mm-hmm. And so I am bad about keeping things, clean because I do shoot a lot and I teach full time. And so, yeah, but I hear the argument, well, I shouldn't have to clean my guns. No, you're right. You should not have to have a clean gun for it to function. But everything is going to,
everything's got a point.
Exactly.
To a certain extent. And then you introduce your environmental factors, and it speeds up that process so much more.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen Canics go 10,000 rounds without cleaning. And so I trust Canics. Canics are great. I had a Canic fail in class yesterday. But the guy probably had 5,000 or 6,000 rounds to it without cleaning, and it was just really dirty, really dusty, really nasty. They're doing all kinds of stuff on the ground, and it's going to eventually fail. So, you might not have to clean it every 2,000 or 3,000 rounds, and that's amazing. You shouldn't have to for it to be reliable. Just like you shouldn't have to change the oil in your car every time you drive. You shouldn't have to. I don't believe I have to clean my guns every time I shoot a gun. My carry gun stays spotless, because it stays on me. Like, that's a gun that is always clean as my carry pistol. But the rest of the time, you don't have to change your oil in your car. But after, 6,000, 7,000 miles, whatever your oil change with, get synthetic or not, you do change that oil.
Well, if you think even about a carry gun too, guys, take your guns out of your holster every once in a while. They're going to be covered in dust. Mm-hmm. Summertime, you're going to be sweating. Mm-hmm. That's moisture that's getting into that firearm. It's just a good idea for the stuff you trust. Like you said, maybe not every time maybe if you go out and say, okay, let me go zero my gun, and you put 10, 15 rounds. Yeah. Well, no, maybe not after that, but maybe every, especially if your gun is sitting a lot with all that carbon on it, not a bad idea to keep that from happening.
Right. Yeah, and it's not one of those, I never focus on round count when I clean rifles or pistols.
Right. It's just, you know what? It's been a while. Time to do it.
I go based on function of the system. So if I go to rack my bolt and I see that there's stuff built up on the bolt carrier group, it's going to get cleaned. If I rack it and it sounds like it's dragging, right?
That's where I was going to get to, too. Yeah. If you get to the point where you can feel it.
Feel it and hear it. Yeah. No. Right? It's too... on that, my carry pistol, any dirt, dust, debris, it gets cleaned. And it's not even like a full disassemble. Half the time I just take a nice oily rag and wipe it down. Stick it back in my holster. But I check my carry gun about every day. I'll unholster it when I take it off of me. I give it a good once over, make sure sights are tight and everything's good. And I'll do a quick functions test. And then, all right, it's back in the holster. Make sure it's wiped down. There's nothing there. And that's just important, right? Last couple things I'm going to talk about. So, make sure your weapon systems handling when you get to a class is on point. There's going to be a safe place for you to load and make ready, or a safe time for you to load and make ready. If that's not been designated as an instructor, don't just start filling with pistols and then people walk in front of each other. And the weapons handling in the beginning of classes, I'm always very vigilant because that's when guys are just careless. They're first getting there. They're undecking guns or throwing stuff down and people are getting swept. And so... making sure that there's that you're having this proper fundamentals where you're walking up to the berms to take that rifle off the sling. If you're carrying 2 or 3 rifles, make sure that safeties are on. Make sure that the muzzles are either pointed at a berm or pointed at the dirt, or if the rifles are safe and slung. And if you unsling the rifle, don't just unsling the rifle towards everybody. I don't care if you know it's empty. I don't know it's empty. They don't know it's empty. And if you'll do it with an empty gun, you'll do it with a loaded gun. So go to those berms to take those rifles off those slings. Make sure that you have safety as a mindset even prior to class starting. And so also, man, be friendly. I think community is so important for us guys, especially. And when you do come to class, make sure you're prioritizing excellence. It's always good to do it the right way, rather than just the way that you've been doing it, or to try to complete the drill as fast as possible. I think a lot of guys turn it into a race almost, and it falls apart. I was teaching a pistol marksmanship clinic last week, and we started with 1-inch dots, 5 yards, 5 shots in the dot. Classic Apexdefense drill here where it's working fundamentals. We finally got the entire class in the 1-inch dot, 5 shots in the 1-inch dot. We just spent 2 hours fine-tuning accuracy.
Which that's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Then we went back to 7 yards and 10 yards. And everybody, we spent an hour getting everybody's marksmanship down. We went back to 25 yards, and I put a single Sharpie line down the center of a target. And we dialed in everybody to where they were shooting the Sharpie line at 25 yards.
That's very impressive.
Super impressive. So you're talking about a Sharpie line smaller than my finger, and you're shooting it at 25 yards. We took a lunch break, and I said, all right, I'm going to start them back at some faster paced drills. 25-yard Sharpie lines. We started out of the holster, 5 hits at 25 yards, steel target. AEC zone is like 66% target, right? You're going from Sharpie line to target. Hit factor 30%. Guys come out of the holster missing 8 rounds in a row. Fell apart. They're racing
off the target, or was there still a line that they're trying to hit? You're saying
they
missing
miss
the line or
steel. They miss steel.
Oh, okay.
You go from hitting a Sharpie line to then missing C-zone piece of steel.
Gotcha.
After lunch. Why? They forgot all the fundamentals we worked on. They went back to all their old habits, weird grips, weird trigger pulls, weird postures, just everything, improper presentation, slapping triggers, the whole game, anticipation, wrist not locked. And so they went back to those old habits. And then it was, all right, well, I need to shoot and beat the next guy. I need to beat the timer. I need to make sure par time is. And so it turned into this, right? They never recovered. Class ran from 9 until 3:30 or 4, and they started at 9, and by 12:30, they were shooting Sharpie lines at 25 yards. They were shooting 5 shots in the head box of cardboard at 25 yards, and then came back from lunch, full-size piece of steel, almost full-size piece of steel, 25 yards, missing 30-40% hit ratios. The entire rest of the class, they never recovered. Never recovered. They fell apart in the next 3 hours. It was just trying to get them back, and they never got back to that point. It was just so hard. And then they're discouraged and they're defeated. Right. You have to be confident. You have to, I know as well as I can that shot's gonna hit every time I pull that trigger. I imagine that shot hit that trigger. I'm confident that shot's gonna hit that target, and when I'm on that trigger.
That's another good point too about losing confidence. Is don't let one negative shot, one bad thing, and I even will do it to myself, but it's a situation of you can't take that shot back. It's left. Focus on the next one. Do what you're supposed to do. Don't be down on yourself. Just try better. That's the whole reason everybody is there. Everybody is there to get better, no matter at what level you're at. If you're wanting to train, you're always striving to get better.
Yeah. And my last one, guys, make sure you're signing up for the right classes. I had a advanced DMR class I ran a few months ago that ended up turning into like a not even scoped carbine 1. So you're going from like a level 3 class, and I don't even think that we got everything done from a level 1 class. Dudes rolled up to advanced DMR, designated marksman in the gear list, semi-automatic rifle with a LPV or MPVO optic. Dudes rolled up with a bolt gun, and he said, well, it takes AR mags, it's close enough. Nope, it's not. Iron sights, we're shooting out to 600 yards, 500 or 600 yards that day. Like A boxes at 500 or 600 yards. Oh, it's fine. Iron sights are good enough. Nope, they're not, because you can't see the target. Because I spray painted the targets camo, because I usually don't shoot white painted steel targets, and so, yep, they're painted camo. You can't see a zone plate at 600 yards painted camo. You just can't. Red dots, nothing was zeroed. I mean, so we're 2 hours into class just fixing gear still. So make sure you're signing up for the right class. And lastly, prioritize the right classes. I know I just saw an article posted, and it was written by a local instructor, and I think for like range time or something. And I did not agree with the article, but it was on prioritize the classes that you need. There's no reason to take a squad tactics class. There's no reason to take a team CQB class. There's really no reason to take a night vision or a CQB course as a civilian. Don't prioritize those. You need pistol classes only, because that's what you're going to use. That was the premise of this article. Do I agree with that? Not really, no. I mean, I do think that we should spend more time on handgun classes, and I do think but we even offer a ton of force on force, CCW, force on force, officer survival. We also do like a citizen's version of survival.
Home Defense 1.
Yep, Home Defense 1.
Single person CQB.
Yep. Yeah, solo CQB is what we teach primarily.
That's
bingo.
And then active shooter as well, armed and unarmed.
Yep. Active shooter response, I think of like self-defense 1, I mean, for instance, or weapon retention. Where, I mean, I don't think
There's actually a lot now that you've
true.
started saying it.
I don't think that we have actually ran a weapon retention class in probably a year and a half. No one signed up for them. We did a managing unknown contacts course. We offered 2 of them. Nobody signed up for them. That's simply, how do I handle someone approaching me asking for money in Walmart parking lot? How do I handle someone approaching my vehicle? How do I handle somebody, in a stairwell having a mental crisis, or in a bathroom? I've been in places like Hickory Tavern Eaton, and I've went to the bathroom, and there's a schizophrenic homeless man that walks in the bathroom, and he's between me and the exit, and he's talking about they're coming to get me, they're coming to get me, they're coming to get me. I mean, I've had stuff like that happen in my own life. I'm sure that you answer calls every day and get called where people have that kind of stuff happen to them.
It's kind of why I harp so much on CQB training, honestly. Because really, in the times we live in now, and the state of the world is, everything, to me and my experiences, everything turns into CQB.
A lot does.
Usually everything happens so close. It really does. When you're talking about prioritizing training, in my opinion, you probably should learn how to clear your house first.
Yeah.
Before you learn how to shoot out to 1,200 yards.
Sure. I agree with you.
That's my opinion. What's more likely to happen? I'll even give you another that we didn't touch on yet that's more likely to happen. How often are you to help either yourself, your family, your loved ones, your friends, random people with a gun, or are you more often to help someone medically?
Right.
That gets back to a whole nother situation.
Stop the bleed or TAC med or things like that. Yeah, for sure. And it is. And so that article was prioritize pistol training, but that's what that company offers, is primarily all pistol training, and so it's easy to say. That's a little bit of a plug
for their company.
Sure. Too. And they're a bunch of competition shooters and dudes, and so they push pistol training more than anything else.
Yeah. And I'm like you. I'm not saying that taking classes like squad tactics, camo and recon, shooting long range, that stuff is important, because it is written in our Constitution. We get back to the Second Amendment. It's a fail-safe for the United States. There's nothing wrong with training those tactics. Hopefully, you'll never need them.
And it's fun.
Hopefully. Exactly.
And it makes me
a lot of fun.
A well-rounded shooter. It's awesome experiences that I can take away.
Yeah.
But, we won't sell a managing unknown contacts or weapon retention or a self-defense 1, but we can sell out sniper operations to civilians.
And me and you have talked about this privately. It's because it's what looks cool. It's what sells. I can go post these pictures on Instagram or Facebook and show all my friends, hey, here's what I did this weekend. taking those classes, like taking, especially, we didn't even get into hand-to-hand classes.
Yeah, right.
Something that's even more likely to happen if you do get into a violent encounter is fighting someone on the ground, fighting someone with your hands before a gun's even presented.
Yeah.
Just stuff like that. If you're in this, and if you're wanting to take classes strictly for entertainment value, then man, go crazy with some of this stuff. Absolutely. But
we got some cool ones.
We do. And like I said, that stuff is still valuable. That skill set is still valuable.
Yeah.
No, it is. However, think about what's more likely to happen in your day-to-day life. Prepare yourself for life and your day-to-day.
Yeah. And that's the thing, and we've seen a really downtick in training the last few months. So, I mean, our numbers have dropped significantly for classes, even this year. And part of that is the economy, and I realize part of that's just, dudes are doing different things. Don't then, downplay your importance of training. I know I guess like me plugging the business. It's not. What I'm saying is always keep growing. Don't just settle and say, well, I'll get to that later. But what we've seen, a downtick in training. We've seen an uptick in our students shooting 2 and 3 gun competitions instead of coming to training classes and prioritizing competitions because it's fun and it's cool to go fast and that kind of thing.
Well, I've also noticed we've had more 2 and 3 gun guys show up for training classes.
Yeah, for sure.
As well. So that tells me there's just more people in general.
It is.
Who are doing that now.
They are. And then the second thing, in the other uptick, we've had far more students buy a lot of Gucci gear in the last 8-9 months where they're maxing out credit cards on Night Force optics and 2 or 3 Geisley rifles, and they're always building some weird, I want an Estonian or I want something, and they're saving up to drop $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 on these rifles, and they're prioritizing that over coming to class, which is even worse, And there's nothing wrong with shooting competitions. Like, guys, I love shooting competitions. I think it's great. I think it's good to get that trigger time. But competitions can't take the place of training. And gear and cool guns and all the Gucci stuff can't take the place of training either. The gun industry right now it's all, it is Gucci stuff. It's guys are running up with like their cool mod lights and, they got their $300 flashlights on their $6,000 rifles, and they're spending $200 or $300 for a flashlight head because it's gonna let them beat photonic barriers. And there's nothing against mod light. I love my mod light. Well, then they don't take low light classes.
These guys are also trying to sell something too. When you talk about the gun industry and it's a bunch of high-end stuff, they're also trying to sell you on that product.
Sure.
As well.
Yeah, and they're great. And so they'll save up for 2 or 3 mod lights, but then they'll never take a low light class to actually learn the tactics behind using it.
Exactly.
And so it can't take the place of your training.
Yep.
It does come back, I think, to mindset. So our spiritual topic for the night
was Job.
Yeah, it's Job. It's that unshakable faith and proper mindset. So I think a lot of that is going to be mindset. And so Christian and I were talking, I want to focus on unshakable faith because I can tell you that's what I'm struggling with the last few weeks is unshakable faith. So I'm essentially going to talk about myself and my own struggles and kind of some stuff that I'm going through in the last couple of weeks. And then Christian's like, man, I really feel like we should do Job. I'm like, that just meets unshakable faith, God's plan so well. So what stood out to you with like the story of Job, and tell me what really brought you into Job, and like what stands out to you, Job, to share with the podcast, and why you really feel like that was placed on you to share.
It was honestly I started reading it before you asked me to come here for this. Mm-hmm. I've been trying to get in my Bible a lot more. That's something I haven't done well in the past, is reading the Bible and knowing the Word well. Mm. So I really want to make a commitment to do that. And honestly, your podcast even helped me to get a jump start on that. It's like, okay, well now you've got to know this material you're talking about.
Sure.
One of the things that I learned about Job is I've always heard kind of the short version of the whole book of Job had a lot was taken from him in order for him to be tested because Satan came to God and said, the only reason he has such faith is because you've given him everything. Who wouldn't have this faith if they've got everything?
Sure.
And he was allowed for that to be taken from him. And then in the end, he stayed faithful and then got it all back. What I didn't know was a lot of what the book of Job is about is that kind of what I mentioned before. It touches on it very early. A lot of the chapters following therein, it talks about how much he spoke to God and complained about the problems he was having.
Sure.
It was a lot about his friends, or so-called friends, but his friends coming to him and talking to him about, okay, well, you've obviously done something to deserve this. You know, he wouldn't do this. They were testing him too. From what I was able to read of it, it did kind of seem too like, hey, you're moping around, but this is what you've probably done, or you've had to done something to deserve this. It's almost like his friends did come to him. To me, I sort of saw it as, okay, maybe they are coming at him in a caring sort of way to tell him.
I think that they came at him with the knowledge of the world, which is, and we see that so often where truth has now become relative, right? Where you have your truth, I have my truth.
Well, there's no such thing.
And there's not. Truth is not relative. Right. Yeah. It's the truth. And so I think even just seeing how the world has reacted to some of these, take COVID, take the Maui fire. I mean, take really anything that we're on Ukraine. I mean, you could go on and on. It's almost as if like we've been so pervasively just where like we've just been so pervasively eroded truth to where it's that worldly knowledge, right? People are destroyed for their lack of knowledge. What that means is it's not that there isn't knowledge, it's just there's a lack of truth. And so to me, when I read that, they're doing, in my opinion, I think you're right. They came trying to comfort him,
because they are coming to him. They are coming to meet him.
They're coming to him saying, hey, here's my opinion. And they're giving him knowledge of the world. It's the same thing. Man, I've heard a couple times this past week where like, well, God wouldn't want you to be unhappy. I'm like, where do you find that at? And some preachers in prosperity gospel and something, that's what they're saying. Well, God won't want you to be happy. Leave your husband because you're not happy. Jesus wouldn't want you unhappy. I'm sorry, I don't find that anywhere in the Word. But it's worldly knowledge. It's their opinion. It sounds good. It makes a cool soundbite. And I think that's what Job's friends, I think that's like the lesson from the friends, in my opinion, is it's that worldly knowledge coming to him, where I do think they had good intentions. They were trying to alleviate the situation. They're trying to comfort him, console him. But man, that is not truth. And I've seen it happen like even with some like people in my life where friends will come up like, oh, block them. Like, don't forgive them. They don't deserve your forgiveness. They haven't apologized. I'm like, man, I don't see that anywhere in Scripture where you owe me an apology for me to forgive you, And if they would only realize how much God's forgiven them and how much they've been forgiven, who am I to hold anybody at account? When I look at what God's done to forgive me just on a daily basis, who am I to, like, that is not freedom and forgiveness. And so I think that's where the friends come into play.
Well, in the Bible I wondered when I was younger why we were told in the Bible to forgive. Because I kind of thought it was a given. Like, well, why would you not forgive? As I have become older, it does get harder to forgive people. The consequences, it seems, of what you're forgiving them for become more serious as you get older.
Yeah,
it's not about some of these really small things anymore. Usually when you get older, it becomes about bigger stuff.
Yeah.
So that's something I've learned just in my personal life. It is hard to forgive people. It can be.
Yeah. But it's free. It's bondage for us if we don't.
It really is.
You know, I think that freedom, it's honestly a self thing. It's for ourselves. It's really, that other person doesn't know if you've forgiven them or not half the time, and you might not talk to them again. It's really for you, or otherwise we're 10 years into this holding on to bitterness and resentment. And, that's bondage for you. And it's actually just alleyways and avenues that the enemy, you're leaving that gate open for the enemy to use. What else stood out to you about Job?
Oh, well, to hit on one thing you mentioned as well.
Yeah.
When you talked about how, well, God wouldn't want me to be unhappy. Well, I shouldn't be unhappy. A lot of people think once they accept Jesus, once they become Christians, that I think they look at life as it will be better. I had, me and my father, actually, we went to a men's, it was like a retreat weekend. It was close to Liberty University. It was a pastor. His name's Dr. Clinton, actually. He told us this a few times. He said, you become a man of God, all hell will be against you.
Absolutely.
And what he meant by that was it's not going to get easier. The closer you get in your faith, you now become a threat to Satan.
Right.
If you're out here witnessing about God, if you're talking to your friends about coming to church or becoming Christians, I mean, if you think about it, before you were a Christian, if you weren't doing nothing, or if you were even like a lukewarm Christian, if you were just someone who went to church and just filled a seat, why should you be tempted? You're no threat to Satan at all.
Sure.
You're not threatening him. The closer you will get, you'll be tempted more.
Yeah, because he comes after the word. The more you're in the word, the more you're sharing the word, the deeper you dive into the word, the more he's going to attack you. Yeah. He comes for the word.
We use it in you've heard this used as a military characteristic, to cut off the head of the snake.
Right.
Well, I feel like Satan could even do that too. It's like, well, if I cut off this guy right here, I don't have to deal with anybody he's witnessing to, who he's talking to, who he could influence for new Christians.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. He will attack you, beat you down until you are combat ineffective. I mean, that's essentially, think Bastogne, World War II, where they were surrounded, the Germans kept hitting them, and there's such a struggle, and the Germans were going, we have to push to this line. So what we're going to do is keep bombarding them with artillery. We're going to just keep smashing them, trying to get them to break that stronghold. And so much in Scripture, strongholds are referenced, right? Strongholds, you think about, they're defended positions. They're not, they're not an empty castle. They're a castle with troops on the walls and gates and doors and good, high places. And we have good strongholds. We have bad strongholds, and so it's interesting to think about that. It is the deeper you go in your calling, the harder that he's going to come against you. And so, I mean, the thing is, it doesn't get, like you said, it doesn't get easier. It just gets harder. And I think a lot of people stay at a lukewarm Christian level for that reason, where it's I don't really want it to get harder.
It's easy.
Yeah, it is. It's the easy choice, which is never usually the right choice. It also comes down to lack of discipline. And I think that we have lost our calling of discipline and excellence, where it's this microwave society where we expect it right now.
Instant gratification.
It is. And we sacrifice who we want to be for what we want now.
Yeah. And it's easier to do that nowadays than ever before.
Yep. We want to shortcut the process. We want the law of the harvest to not exist. We want to plant the seed and then reap the harvest the next day or the same day. The law of the harvest is you're going to plant a seed and there's going to be a harvest, but you're going to have to wait for the harvest. Like, you've never planted a tomato plant and then all of a sudden got tomatoes the next day. That's not how that works. I wish it was, but that's not how that works. And so there's going to be a seed, and every seed generates after its own kind. So what you're generating now is going to be what you're generating in your harvest. What you're generating now is going to be what your generations generate, and it's going to affect your generations. And so, like that struggle with the law of the harvest is, we're so used to instant gratification that we take shortcuts. And so that's just like getting on steroids instead of just working out more, or, in working out, you'll have injuries, right? Because dudes will walk in, they're like, I want to get jacked in 2 weeks. And they just start pumping as much weight as possible, going to the gym twice a day. And then all of a sudden, 2 weeks into this, I know a guy, he was training up for a deployment and he hadn't been running, hadn't been doing anything. He started his routine by putting on a 60-pound rucksack and running on a treadmill. 2 weeks later, could not walk because his shin splints were so bad.
I will say that's impressive that he went all out like that.
My man, I know. Yeah. Where I think a lot of our problems that we have in life now with our faith and different things is we try to have those shortcuts. And that the beautiful thing about discipline, and I think that's why so many times in Scripture we're called to discipline ourselves, is because the results of discipline are prolonged, but they're also lasting. And so if you do have that discipline, it might be a prolonged gratification, a prolonged result. That's why, Christian life is a journey. It's a race. It's not a quick sprint, and so I think that or even like Job in that case, times of unshakable faith where you can say, okay, Daniel, who was praying and praying and praying, and his prayers weren't being answered. And then the angel shows up and says, hey, the Prince of Persia was keeping us from, answering your prayers. Or you have, even think about Joseph in prison, or Paul in prison, or King David, after they said, man, you're going to be king. And he gets sent right back out to tend sheep, where he's sitting here going, okay, I'm supposed to be king. I'm now tending my sheep for, 10 years. And he's sitting there every day in the fields. And I'm sure that he got discouraged and got down, and no one wants to, sit out and tend sheep for 10 years. So instead of living in a palace, and I understand that. But when it came down to it, God's using that time to shape you and prepare you. If he would just say, you know what, forget this, I'm not tending my sheep, I'm going to the palace, he would have been killed. That shortcut, right? We try to write our own story, and we pull ourselves out of the story that God's trying to write for us. The nice thing is he can always rewrite those stories. Like, he's the master author and finisher of our faith, thank goodness. But that prolonging, that unshakable faith, like Job, where he's going, no matter what you throw against me, my faith stands. And you look at David, when he finally went to go kill Goliath, it says that he has killed the lion, he's killed the bear. He did that while tending sheep. If you think he had never killed the lions, killed the bears, if he never fought that before, what do you think his confidence would have been? What do you think his mindset would have been? His preparation. If you've never taken a pistol marksmanship class, I'll tell you to go shoot 200 yards, right? We ended up in that class finishing at 200 yards. If you hadn't have started all day shooting 3 yards, 1-inch dots, 5 yards, 1-inch dots, 7-yard, 1-inch darts, Sharpie lines at 25, right? If you're not growing and building and trusting that process, and then it becomes the issue. So that part of that unshakable faith is to say, no, I'm trusting the process, but that takes us out of the equation somewhat, because we're not in control of the process and we don't have that timing down. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree with it. You've got to be able to walk before you're able to run.
Yeah.
To sum it up. And to relate it back to the training we do here, we have prerequisite classes. And it's not something that's like, well, I don't want to take these prereqs. I already know this stuff. There still may be something there that you don't. Like if you've been shooting for a while and you've owned a gun for a while, and yeah, you probably know how to take your gun apart. You probably know how to clean it. You might know how to present it the right way. You know how to line your sights up like you're supposed to. There may still be something from that class that you take away, and if you were to skip that class, you wouldn't have that for the more advanced classes you're taking down the road. Yeah,
and an example of that would be how to clear basic pistol malfunctions. We cover that in beginner pistol. And the guys that skip beginner pistol, because they say, look, I know how to do it. I send the checklist. Can you do this? They reply back, yes. Okay, then sign up for defensive handgun 1. And then in defensive handgun 1, we're clearing malfunctions one-handed and things, where they've completely, like, they've never even heard of those malfunctions. Well, if they hadn't have skipped beginner, then they would have benefited from that, learning all about the malfunctions, what causes those malfunctions, and how to fix those malfunctions so they're more prepared for handgun 1. Yeah,
I've heard it from even a couple of law enforcement guys, like when it comes to malfunctions, tap, rack, bang. Well, that doesn't work for everything.
Right.
And I think that might have been an old military tactic. It was like the first thing you do is this. Well, no, maybe I can roll my gun over if it's a rifle slightly, see what the malfunction is, and see, okay, if I have a double feed, that tap, rack, bang is only going to make my malfunction worse, and now I'm wasting time doing that tap, rack, bang.
Yeah, exactly. And for sure. And other times, then they rack and tap, rack, ready, or tap, rack, bang. I love it. And do an assessment, right? But yeah, and they'll come in and I'll like, all right, tap, rack, ready, or tap, rack, bang, and they rack it and pull the trigger, click. They rack it again, pull the trigger, click, because they're not tapping it and the mag's not seated. Right, and so if like tap, don't skip the process where they're going, this makes the gun go off, and they keep racking it and keep racking it. It's a prime example. Tap it first, rack it. Don't skip the first step. But I think we are, and I think that the second that we encounter those problems, we react. If you think about Job had to change that reaction. You said earlier you went to a men's conference and they were talking about, the Christian walk. I think so many people have prayed this prayer to go to heaven or have a good lifestyle or what. That was never the intention of salvation. It wasn't even forgiveness of sins. It's getting back into relationship with God. That was the reason for our sins have to be forgiven, because that's a veil that keeps us out of the presence, in my opinion. So I don't even think, that we pray a prayer to go ahead. We pray a prayer because, we're on our deathbed, or you hear all these examples of people who pray the prayer for salvation. The whole point of salvation is to believe, and our belief is how ready am I to act on this through faith, and then it's to be made into the likeness of God, right? But that's a transforming process. And so we go, all right, cool, I prayed a prayer to go to heaven, I'm a Christian. But then they never live that way. And I go back to scripture. Narrow is the gate, and Jesus says, you will say, Lord, Lord, and I will say, depart from me, I've never known you. Where, even the demons know of him and believe in him, but they don't act that way. And so there's that transformation process, and we think, man, I'm gonna pray this prayer, I'm gonna get saved for the benefit. The benefit is actually being made more like him. It's not living in a mansion in heaven. It's just not. The benefit, and it can start today, where guys go, I'm a Christian, but I'm just downtrodden, brother, and I'm ready to go to heaven. It's like, wait, pause for a second, right? You're missing out on the glory of life here. Like, God's giving you the glory to live in relationship with him now. If you're a Christian, it's a little Christ-like. If I squeeze an orange, I get orange juice. If I squeeze you, I should get Jesus. Like, that's just what that comes into. And we don't want to get squeezed. I think that's a word.
You should also not be looking at it from a perspective of, I'm looking to see, I'm doing it for the benefit.
Bingo.
Eventually, you should want, not even eventually, sooner than
instantly, you should want relationship.
You should want the relationship, but also where you'll get to as well is, how can I serve him as well? Instead of just, okay, I want to accept Jesus so I can go to heaven, but now you're also looking at, how do I serve him? How do I fulfill what he has done for me? And some people may feel like they can't, but honestly, we all fall short.
Sure.
We all don't deserve to go to heaven. That's why there is salvation. That's why that word is there, where you accept Jesus, you want a relationship with him, so you can inherit that.
I've honestly never long-term changed to be more like Christ by trying harder or being condemned more. I haven't. It has been through genuine relationship, praise, worship, prayer, relationship with him, and it's a heart change. It's an internal change where he's just ultimately changing my desires. And
exactly. Yeah, I can even speak to that for myself, because it's been like, all right, I'm going to have this mental toughness. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to have these struggles. Yeah. Instead of just go pray or go get in the Word more. And that's the reason why.
Bingo.
That's the reason why I've told you how I've been trying to get in the Word more, because I've tried everything else and it doesn't work.
Right. I've tried really hard to be good. It doesn't
by myself. You can't do it by yourself.
No, and we were never meant to. Like, that's what. It's the beautiful thing about the Holy Spirit is he does all that internal work by truth. And I think that's the biggest thing is we miss that point. So if I want to act a certain way, the correct answer is, why do I want to act that certain way? You have to let truth penetrate that. So the hard questions is, okay, why is that my reaction? Why is that, and it's usually, and we can hope for better and we can do different things. If I start missing, I might hope that's because my red dot's not zeroed. That might be my hope, right? But the reality doesn't mean that my rifle is not zeroed, right? And so our car doesn't start, okay? It could be a starter, or it could be a dead battery, right? I'm going to sit there and hope and hope and hope that it's just a dead battery and I can get a jump and life's good. Just because I hope and want it to be a dead battery does not mean that reality somehow morphs to make it a dead battery if I need to replace my starter. And so I think, like, for us, it's going to come down to actually instilling that truth. Truth comes from the Word, right? And it comes from the Holy Spirit working in you and on a God level, fixing those God-sized problems, filling those God-sized holes. And so I think that so much of us have given up that discernment for desire. And it's whatever I want. And it's me versus the discernment of that is right, that is wrong, that is righteousness, that is holiness, that is going to lead me down a path of destruction, right? That is truth, that is lie. That is ultimately discernment. Is one is truth, one is lie. If it's bitterness and anger and resentment or arguing with your spouse, that is lie. If it's peacemaking and holiness and righteousness and love, sacrificial love, not like, what can I get out of this love? It's true surrender, it's service. That's truth. But it's so easy to try to protect ourselves and serve ourselves that you can't serve two masters, and so that's why love is ultimately our calling, is because it's the ultimate form of selflessness and sacrificial. And that's, I think, a lot of marriages struggle today for that reason. We are not called to outdo each other in service. We're not called to outdo each other in works. We're not called to outdo each other in an argument or in chores. Or the only thing we're called to do scripturally is outdo each other in honoring each other. Mm-hmm. That blows my mind. I mean, because the ultimate point of honoring is taking away from me and giving it's you get the credit, you get the respect. Women need love, men need respect, and that's what that comes down to. And
that's biblical too. It even says that
Ephesians.
Love doesn't take an account any account. Love does not keep score, doesn't keep a record.
Yeah, and so I don't know. I think that so much of us is our mindset. It's a truth issue. Job had such unshakable faith, and even though look at his wife. Just curse God and die. Like, you have to be careful what truth and opinion you're letting into you. And ultimately, that unshakable faith, he didn't, right?
He did. Right. And he talked about it a lot. He cried out to God a lot. That's mainly what the majority of the book is, about him crying out to God and talking to his friends that come and visit him and come talk to him. And he did. He complained a lot, and he had a lot to complain about.
Right.
If there was something worth complaining about, he lost everything. But he did. He still stayed faithful to God, and God came to him at the end and blessed him with even more than he had before. Blessed him with new children. And he had even more than he had before because he kept his faith. And I did today. I finished the end of it. He had even mentioned about how his friends had talked ill about him, or what they said was not accurate, and said, Job is going to pray for you. You're going to go take some of your livestock, and you're going to prepare a burnt offering to Job because of what you said to him.
Yeah. Yeah. And God will use that story, our story, so often in our trials and tribulations, and you'll see we're going through a struggle, and then God elevates his purpose for it. Our goal with salvation is not to go to heaven, not to do it's that relationship, but then it's that relationship to then further the kingdom and serve him. Mm-hmm. So think about Jonah, for instance. It talks about how the sailors that were on Jonah's ship, they were unbelievers. And then through the storm, through what would be Jonah's...
because they blamed Jonah for the storm. That, hey, this is your fault. You're not supposed to be where you're at.
Right, because they actually said, oh my gosh, you have prayed to your God to stop this. You have disobeyed. And then they started calling him their God, right? Mm-hmm. And so through Jonah's trial and tribulation, sailors now believe, right? I mean, it's just, and there's plenty of biblical...
at least to a certain extent.
Yeah, there's plenty of biblical examples of that, where, it's other people's trials or worse moments are then used by God to bring others to him or to a deeper faith. And that's awesome. And I think that so many of us, we don't want that. We don't want life shaken. Like that, I said earlier, it's an unshakable faith. We don't want to get shaken. We don't want turbulence on an airplane. And I'll relate that back to like olives. We hear oil and we're like, God, like refill our oil, and that oil is used to kindle that fire in us and through the Holy Spirit and that anointing. And we always want that oil, and Scripture says that fresh oil. God, give me that fresh oil. And Psalms is mentioned where we need that fresh, right? Let me see fresh, and we want that. And to make oil, let's take olive oil for instance. We always talk about the pressing, and we hear like, oh, God, you're in that pressing where you're being pushed, and you do get that purification where that that oil comes out, and it's through that pressing that God transforms us into something. Before that olive is ever pressed, it's shaken from the tree, and so that unshakable, you're going to get that shaking. And that's usually when we bow out. We're like, yeah, okay. If we even push through that shaking, we're like, all right, we survived the shaking, and then comes the pressing. But ultimately, it's fulfilling our objective. It's fulfilling God's objective of transforming us into something more like Him, getting out all the lies, refilling it with truth, going back to like it was in the garden, where it was, relationship with Him. They didn't know sin. They didn't know death. They didn't know they didn't have all these, voids and insecurities and reactions, and so our faith is not defined by a moment, it's defined by the movement towards the objective. And so that movement towards the objective is about being teachable and about that transforming process. It's about that growth. And so part of that's just getting that new truth. And getting that new truth means you're getting pressed out those impurities. And He uses that refiner's fire. And it's talked about over and over where we're in the fire. Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, in the fire. Where that's that faith. And that's where your faith really is made alive, is in that fire. We look at that fire as punishment. But if you were to put gold in that refiner's fire, right, it's coming out pure. It's removing those impurities. And, a diamond with flaws is still much more valuable than a rock with no flaws, and good.
That's where your strength comes from.
It is.
It's through the trials. You'll come out stronger. It's either gonna break you down and you can decide to give up, or you're gonna come out stronger on the other side.
Yeah, and I always said, like, when I first got saved, I was a broken cup. I was a cup with a bunch of holes in it. And I was taken from other people's cups, and I had those insecurities and struggles and things, and taken from other people's cup, and I would drain their cup, and they would just run through mine, and it still wasn't fixing those problems. And it took God shattering that cup, right, and then reforming it, reforging it into something more whole, more complete, and it, He's still doing it. He's still making it. So think about the Christian journey where you are being forged. You're making a sword. You're going to get beat on and shoved in water, and you're going to get but it's going to come out a sword when you're done in that forging process. You're going to be heated and pressed and beat, but you're going to come out something useful, beautiful, whole, effective, where you're taking this little block and you're turning it into a weapon, right? And so, like, that's part of Job's whole thing, is through those tests and those trials, it's part of that plan for your purification, but it's also fixing our response. I love Joel's response. So a lot of us react instead of respond, and there's a big difference. A response versus a reaction. One is planned, one is not. Mm-hmm. When we talk about law enforcement calls, we don't say they reacted to a call, they responded to a call, right? Mm-hmm. And so there is in that shaking, that purification process. So don't be afraid to bring God your concerns. Like, He already knows them anyway. Have that open relationship. That's why it's something I do like about Job. He wasn't afraid to approach God with his problems.
Oh no, he did that a lot.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But he also wasn't afraid to approach God with praise during those problems. Yep. And that's the big thing, is praise and worship. Praise is speaking into the outer sphere. Worship is doing the work in the inner sphere, in my opinion. I think they are different. Where praise is telling God who He is, and worship is then God coming back and doing a work from us, and in us, is putting us back into alignment. And I think that's so important in your prayer life. And Job prayed a lot, and I love that. And so, yeah, and it also is careful who your friends are. I mean, and who, Job's wife, we always pick on Job's wife, but I mean, she was lost, and it's easy to put Job's wife down instead of praying for Job's wife, going, man, she honestly needs a trial herself, where she needs that purification process, where she's going out of reaction instead of response. But so many of us in these tests and these trials, we do exactly like Job's, curse God and die, right? In that forging process, we give up. We lose faith. Like you said earlier, you have to be confident that you're going to make that shot. Those guys lost confidence and fell apart completely in class. We lose confidence. And then we lose faith. And confidence is so important, and that he is, the same God today that he was yesterday. And look at what he's brought me through. And any struggles I've had recently, God's been pressed on me so hard to say, hey, focus on my testimonies. Focus on the testimonies from Scripture. Focus on the testimonies of your buddies. Focus on the testimonies of the last year. Look at what I've brought you through, brought you out of, fixed in you. Focus on those testimonies and then testify to it. That's why testimonies are so important, and your testimony is so important. It's almost a word of the prophetic where you're speaking into saying, hey, God's done this for me, and he will do it again. Yep. That's the nice thing about your testimony is look at what God has done for me. He can and will do it for you. Mm-hmm. And so if you focus on those testimonies of God, you're speaking into it going, hey, he's done this and he will do it again. You're speaking into that. And I think that Job also did that quite well, but does come back to that version of unshakable faith. Anything else you want to add about unshakable faith or just about the faith of Job?
No, I think we've hit on it.
Okay. I got a couple of things. So that lifestyle of unshakable faith. So we can use plenty of examples of Noah. It's really hard to hide that much lumber in your yard if you're Noah. We can use, I'm just saying it is, and it's not rained. We can use Joseph in prison. We can use Ruth. We can use David. We can use a lot of things. And even I'm using Job, right? If you look at that whole process of an unshakable life and an unshakable faith, it's, I've never been here before. It's a new season. It's a new struggle, but I'm not going to compromise. And that's the big thing about Job that I love about an unshakable lifestyle and an unshakable faith is it's a lack of compromise. But we start to compromise in our faith because we lose confidence. Then we pull ourselves out of the story. We try to rewrite our own story. We were never meant to be the author of our story, and so that's your struggle too. You go, I want the confidence of Job. I want the confidence of John where it's like, no matter what, John was a fisherman and come and follow me, drops nets, walks out. I want the confidence of Job that, hey, no matter what, I'm not going to, where I'm so secure in God that my answer is yes, no matter what. And I definitely have not hit that phase in my life yet. I hope one day I am. But that's essentially love, right? I mean, it's that confidence, and that's what God's trying to instill in us is faith and passion and love, in trusting in God's timing. And I still struggle a lot with God's timing, for sure. So let's think about what is some examples of a recipe for an unshakable life, for attributes of an unshakable life, where we can hold fast in our faith. And I love in Scripture talks about holding fast, and I love the example of that. So it's a sailing term, which is to take your hand and interweave it into the rigging of a ship. And so what you're doing is you're binding yourself to the mast or to the structure of the ship. So in that tossing and turning, you're essentially anchoring yourself. You're interweaving, intertwining. That's why God says over and over in Christ to abide. So to abide is that inner dwelling. We're called to abide in him daily, where it's that intermixing, inner dwelling. So we're holding fast. We're weaving our hand through that rigging and tying ourselves off. And so no matter what storm, you are fixed, right? You're bound. And that's why Christian said earlier, we're called to serve. Like a servant is bound to the master. And so it's that clinging. Hebrews 13:8 is a good scripture for that, talking about clinging to his testimonies. John 1:1, is good, where he talks about the word, and John says, the word has already been spoken and has already conquered, right? And so if you look at, there's letters in 2 John, there's a good example. And so I think that step one to that unshakable lifestyle is being intertwined in the word. I think a lot of what we struggle with is truth over lies. There's a really good book I'm reading now. I highly suggest it. It's called Lies About Truth and the Truth About Lies. And it is a phenomenal book you guys should read. It's really hitting hard for me. And so, if you think about it, you're living on credit. The word's already been spoken. the word came before, Satan comes after the word, but the word came before even the enemy, right? And so the word has come before whatever you're dealing with. That truth is come before your facts, and those facts come over your feelings. And so I think that a lot of that is we don't know what the future holds, but we do know who holds the future. We don't know, even if we have a bunch of unknowns, like in CQB class, we have a known, and that is God and his testimonies. And so we need to discipline ourselves in our default reactions. And so my default reaction needs to be discipline. And I think that's something that Job brings to the table so well. Is Job over and over and over, he prayed about it. His default reaction really was discipline, in the fact that no matter what, the word was his default. That in that waiting time, he's working. In that waiting time, he's holding on to that faith. And so I think like everything matters. Everything matters to your confidence. And so, speaking into that, I think this number 2, I think before that, in your confidence, worship and not worry is going to be key. Where you're holding on to that mission and that purpose. Number 2 is being in the light. So there's no darkness in God, and so part of that fellowship with God and walking with God is that you're not walking in darkness. And so much of Scripture talks about walk in the light, and God is the light. Don't walk in darkness. And so, if you are walking in the light, I teach this in low light CQB, and you can relate to this. Every time you cast a light, there's a shadow.
Yep.
And the brighter the light, the darker the shadow. It plays so well off of what we were talking about earlier. The further you go, the harder it gets. The brighter the light, the darker the shadow. Where are your shadows? And I always teach in low light CQB, man, your light needs to be in the deepest places, right? I mean, and you know that from working night shift, your light doesn't need to be right in front of you. It needs to be further out.
Yep.
And so,
just to be able to see what's right in front of you.
Right, exactly. So my light in home defense or light CQB, it needs to be in those darkest places, in those deepest places. So where are your shadows? Where are your darkest shadows, deepest depths? Where does that light need to be penetrated? Where God is working that light. And so where you casting your light, make it deep. That in the darkness is where you hide your enemy. If you have lots of shadows, man, you need to start illuminating those with light. What is light? It's truth. Where does truth come from? The Word. And that Holy Spirit indwelling in you and asking the Holy Spirit to reveal those dark places and those shadows, and make sure that you have that light where you're letting the Word of God identify you and align you and cast that light into you. And so I think that's unity. I also think that it's fixing where we're working. So one of our pastors said a great line, said, where we carry from where we tarry. And I love that line because it's true. Where we're working is where we're going to carry out of. If you're working at your workplace, bitterness and, I'm so tired of this place and I don't like my coworkers and all that, you're going to carry out of that, even that mindset. So you're transforming, you're not conforming. And that's the beautiful thing about walking in light is you're always transforming, you're never conforming. And so in those relationships and exchanges, you've got it. I think the last thing is fear of the God is going to be key. And so many of my struggles is like just fear of the unknown and fear of what's going to happen. And I'm very much like a control freak and I'm working on it. And so it's like that anxiety of, well, I don't know what's going to happen in my job. I don't know what's going to happen, 6 months around the country. I don't know what's going to happen in my future relationships. And especially me being very task, mission, objective driven, you're like that too. It's easy for us to get in our own head about careers or home life or what. I mean, it just is. We get in our own head. And I think that fear of God and that's why it talks about the fear of the Lord so many times. And I think it's so important because if we truly fear God above all, we really don't fear anything else. If disappointing God, if me pulling myself out of alignment with God, if me breaking that relationship off with God, if me, it's not like fear of disappointment. It's me just not doing things His way. If I love and respect Him that much, right? If I want to do things that way, and that's like the whole point of fearing God as He's using Scripture. It's not like afraid He's going to smite you down. It's afraid that you're not going to be in alignment in relationship with him.
It's a respectful.
It is. Yeah, absolutely. And it's, I need you, I want you, I don't want anything to ever separate us. That's that fear. And if that's truly what I'm after, if that's truly my task, mission, objective, and that comes before everything else, what else is there to fear?
And that's really a relationship style of fear, the way you actually just put it.
It 100% is. And so, you know, I might have fear of the unknown, I might have this, but if I truly fear God above fear of future relationships, I'm going to stay in alignment and be working for him going into those future relationships. I think if we don't fear God above all, then we fear everything else. And we're called to love and not fear, right? I mean, so many times and so in those storms, you know, it's, I love the song, the lyrics, it's, hold me fast, let me stand in the hollow of thy hand, keep me safe as the storm passes by. And so I always picture, man, like in those hollow nail prints, that's that refuge and that fortress during that storm. If his hand's in the middle of the storm, in the nail print hole in the center of the hand is that refuge where he's got it. He's the master of the storm. The storm is not going to move that hand, you know. And so I think it's that anchor process where that, you know, he is the peace. He's holding it all together. He is truth. He is love. And in the meantime, in the storm, we're just crucifying ourselves daily to be more like him. We're picking up our cross and following him. We're holding fast. Hebrews 6:19 is a good one. Hebrews 6:18 and 19 talks a lot about great confidence and holding fast and him being the anchor. And that anchor is in truth and in love. And that's really what we have to do is we have to push through. We have to let worship get behind that veil where we're, you know, getting out of some of these old worldly routines like Job's friends and wife, and we're getting into his routines where it's at him and you and that light shining through. And so it's just interesting where we have to make that commitment where no matter what, we are not turning back and doing things our way. We're going to do things his way because it's the right way. And I think that's ultimately, I love the story of Job for that. Anything else you want to add on that?
One thing I did want to add when you were talking about anxiety, I know a lot of people deal with that nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't. I'm not saying that as to brag.
No,
I'm saying this to help people who may be, because a lot of people, I hear it a lot that people deal with that. One thing that helps me not deal with it is if it's something, it's first thing, if it's a worry or a problem, I think, okay, what can I do to fix it? That's the first thing. Is instead of turn that anxiety into action, instead of worrying about it, try to make a plan to conquer it. And then if it's nothing you can control, it's out of your control.
Yeah.
Pray about it. Pray about it either way before you do it. But pray about it, leave it to God, and it will work out in the way it's supposed to.
That's so much harder than it sounds because we want that. Because we want that control of It takes such a high level of trust, faith, love, and confidence to say, all right, you make it work.
Once you realize that you can't control everything.
Sure.
And you say, okay, I just need to make a plan for when this happened. It's just like if you're in law enforcement or military or private military contracting. It's, okay, well, what's the problem? Let's make a plan to attack that problem.
Yes.
Just treat the problems in life that way.
Yeah, but we don't. We react, right? It's all reaction, right, versus responding. You know, a response should be a plan. If you know that you struggle with trust issues, if you know that you struggle with control issues, if you know you struggle with anxiety, you know you struggle with anger with your wife or anger with your children or anger with your coworkers or insert your bad thing here. If you always just react out of that and you never actually make a plan to respond and conquer it, you're going to look 10 years from now and you're going to go, holy cow, I've struggled with that this entire time. You know, and so we don't make a plan. I love that you said that. Because we don't. We know we struggle with X, Y, and Z. And all of a sudden it just becomes our identity where it's, well, I've always struggled with anger issues. That doesn't make it right. Like, make a plan to attack that.
People will actually make things like that their identity. Well, I'm just an angry person.
Right. I'm just a victim. I'm just whatever. I'm just and I always did that too. I always have trust issues. That doesn't make it right. You're accepting your bondage at this point. No, make a plan to attack it. The other thing about anxiety, so there's a great study. You cannot be grateful and anxious at the same time. The chemicals cannot exist in the brain together. So a way that you can defeat anxiety is gratitude. And so if you really want to just think about how the brain processes. Man, take that anxiety and turn it into praise, where praise is speaking into God about who he is and being thankful and grateful. Anytime you have that anxiety, turn it into a praise instead and say, God, I don't know who I'm going to marry, but I know that you're going to make sure it's good because your promises, your testimony is all things work for the good of those who follow and serve him. So no matter what, and in the meantime, I'm not going to waste the waiting. I'm going to follow you harder. I'm going to pursue you harder. I'm going to make myself a godly man. So when you do bring me that person, I'm ready as I can be, and work in me to make me that servant. Yeah. So I don't know. It is interesting. I do like that. Is that plan of attack. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anything else you want to add?
I think that's going to do it.
Guys, thank you so much for tuning in with us. Christian, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We will see you guys for episode 17.